Every single year I film this, I ask myself the same question. How is it mid-year already? And I have yet to find the answer to this, but time goes by too quickly. I do not understand. Thank you so much to Rosetta Stone for partnering with me on today's video. I can't be the only one that absolutely loves learning new languages and fully immersing myself in it, from getting to understand the languages of the countries I'm visiting all the way to getting new opportunities because of it. It is so rewarding, and that's where Rosetta Stone kicks in. With their dynamic immersion approach, they'll help you tap into your natural ability to learn new languages because it allows you to see, hear, speak, read, and write in your chosen language to learn real conversations in real scenarios, and it's all in the practicality. What you want is to connect with real people, and Rosetta Stone helps you do exactly that. They've got tools like voice recognition that'll help you perfect your accent, and my favorite part is the fact that it actually tells you your accuracy as you are speaking so that it actually helps you correct your mistakes as you go. And to top things off, their lessons are as short as 10 minutes long. You can do them in the app, you can do them on the go, so it's super adaptable to whatever it is you need on your daily life with your schedule. With their lifetime subscription, you can get their entire backlog for 50% off, meaning that you'll pay $150 instead of $299, and that'll unlock every single language, and you only pay once. So I'm just saying, if you are interested, make sure you click the link in the description. Hello friends, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing the mid-year freakout tag, mid-year freakout book tag, whatever it's called. I never really know in what order it goes, but we're filming it. It is that time of year where halfway through we do a little reading check-in. How are we doing? How are those goals holding up? What books are our current favorites? What are the biggest disappointments of the year? Etc, etc. And I am very excited to catch up with you guys. I was traveling for most of June, and now I'm back. I got homesick with the flu. It's been an entire thing, but we are back, and it's time to talk about all the books we have read in 2023. Just as a little point of reference, this year so far, I have read 31 books. My goal is set at 75, and I'm quite enjoying this reading slower thing we've got going on. I set that as my biggest goal for 2023, and I have to say, it has been so just relieving to take it at my own time, not worry about the quantity, but worry about the quality of books I'm reading, just picking out whatever it is I'm feeling, and mostly just mood reading, which has been such a huge 180 compared to what I did for most of 2022, which was a lot of like reading for videos and like reading what I thought I had to be reading. Also very subjective as well, but still, I was not having the greatest time with my reading, and so I did want to turn it back around in 2023 and make sure that at the forefront of everything was my enjoyment of reading and books and all things literature, and it's just been absolutely fantastic to prioritize that over anything else. And so 31 books so far, take that as you will. Good progress, bad progress. Goodreads is broken. Sometimes it tells me I'm 6 books behind. Sometimes it tells me, like right now, that I am on track. Sometimes it feels bad. Sometimes it feels good. But overall, I'm enjoying my time, which is the most important thing. And so for our very first question, we have got best book you have read so far in 2023. I kind of struggled with this one because I have had a lot of luck, I think, this year with the books I'm picking out, where most of the things I have read have been anywhere between like a 4 and a 5 star. And so I kind of struggled because I was like, what makes the best book I've read this year? Is it the book that made me cry? Is it the book that like revitalized my love of fantasy? And it indeed was the book that revitalized my love for fantasy. And this is Daughter of No Worlds by Carissa Broadbent. I struggled with fantasy romance as a genre, even though I like the idea of it. And this just kind of checked off all of the things I look for. It had a great, well-developed romance where you understand why the two characters are into each other. They become friends first, and then they hop into a relationship. It's not one of the books that has a lot of smut to it that kind of takes away from the actual either storyline or relationship or dynamic between the characters. There is minimal smut in this book, but it just works so well. The politics of the world are very, very clear, and you understand how it all machinates. And on top of that, the conflict is also really, really good. So in this one, we have got Tasana. She has recently bought her freedom, and she is hell-bent on helping the people that are in the exact same situation that she was. And so she enlists the help of the Order. However, the Order will help her with a little bit of a catch. They ask her to train her abilities because they will find it useful in one way or another. And in exchange for her abilities and her time and all the things, they will then help her people and free them as she freed herself. And in the midst of that, she meets Max, who is the person who is going to train her, and they develop this little dynamic situation that results in them being romantically involved. There's just something about like the trainer-trainee dynamic that I know a lot of people don't enjoy. I love it. It really just gives me Winter Widow vibes, Bucky / Winter Soldier / Natasha Romanoff, and there's just something about that that I quite enjoy. And so anything that has trainer-trainee, I'm like, I am gonna read it. I am that sucker. And so I loved all of it. It reminded me in ways her ability, her power of like Dark Phoenix / Wanda, and I loved the imagery of that itself, and the progression of everything was just so good. So no complaints, all good things. Best sequel you've read so far this year. For this one, I went with what is technically not a sequel, but it is a prequel. But technically it came out after the main series, so is it a prequel sequel? It's kind of both. The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. This is the prequel to The Hunger Games, in which we follow our resident president in the series, Coriolanus Snow. I'm like, is it Coriolanus? Is it Coriolanus? Semantics, honestly, if you ask me. However, we follow him as a young adult and as a mentor in the 10th Hunger Games. So one of the first few ones after the war has happened, and we really got to see firsthand not only his involvement with Lucy Greybeard, who is the tribute he has to Mentor, and how it has a little bit of a poetic irony the more you go along with the actual Hunger Games series. It's actually all so good how it all ties together with like the little details. But most of all, we get to see how he impacts the games as we conventionally know them in the main trilogy, because they are vastly different in this installment versus the main event. And so I loved seeing how his brain worked in this one. Like, it's not he's not a good person by any means, but I love being inside like the villain's brain and seeing just how everything is kind of justified and how everything kind of progresses. It was honestly really, really great to see, and I love how complex his character is. You get to see him through very dire situations, through very emotional situations, but what prevails over anything else is his survival instinct. He is a person that thinks of himself and his self-preservation over anything else, and you can see that in this book. All of his responses are out of fear, are out of ego, are out of mania, and so that in and of itself was fantastic. And as always, Suzanne Collins never disappoints, so can't wait to see the movie. New release you haven't read yet but want to. I have two answers for this, and they are both hopefully books that I will be reading very soon. At least that's the hope. I always say that I'll read books soon, and then like 2 years go by and then I don't, and then I pick them up. My timeline is very broken, and I also have no concept of time, so I think that doesn't help in that either. This is The Frugal Wizard's Handbook for Surviving Medieval England by Brandon Sanderson. Quite recently, I received this one. I strived to not know anything about the secret projects, and so I find out as I get them, which is honestly the best thing. It's like a little surprise every time. I love it. And so this is the second book, and this is the non-Cosmere book, which is why I'm so excited to read it, because I want to read something outside of the Cosmere, but that is still Sanderson, because I enjoy his writing so much. I've got no idea what this is about, so do not ask me, but I love just like all of the little illustrations and all of the special stuff that comes in this book. You've got a bunch of like frequently asked questions pages. You've also got illustrations if I can find any. Here we go. These editions and like the leather bound. It's just so nice. It feels so luxurious. The back of it is really what got me. I mean, aside from the fact that it just looks interesting, this book has got like a good vibe, you know? Like I hold it and I'm like, damn, it looks like a good book. We here at Frugal Wizard Inc. are committed to providing you with the highest quality experience possible, available to any true wizard for a reasonable price. We provide the fun, you provide the body. And the money. Don't forget the money also. We mean your own body, though we don't ask too many questions. I don't know, it just sounds like so cozy and like so good and so chaotic. Very much into these vibes. Then the other one is Painted Devils, which is the sequel to Little Thieves, which I absolutely loved when I read it last year. I was going through like a fantasy rut last year, and Little Thieves was one of those books I read and I immediately went, this is so different. It's like so unlike anything I've read before, and I loved it for that reason. And so the ending of the book kind of leaves off with this little little, not open ending necessarily, because it does wrap up quite nicely, but it does leave you with the wherever you go, I go as well, because it's a game of cat and mouse that plays into the storyline, and I just love it so much. This is the Illumicrate edition, and just wait up until you see this ridiculousness. It's always the naked book that's just so good. If you guys see these books anywhere, Little Thieves as well, because it is stunning, literally get them because they are so stunning. As far as like the Illumicrate edition goes, if you find one for a reasonable price, I'm not enabling, but I am enabling at the same time. In the first one, we follow Vanya, who is a jewel thief. She has also stolen the identity of the princess. Said investigator, Emmerich, starts playing this little game of cat and mouse with her because he thinks she is not as innocent as she says, but then there's this curse going on that was placed on her by the gods, and so she has to break that as well before she dies. It's so good. I promise you, it's so good, and so I can't wait to read Painted Devils. Most anticipated release for the second half of the year. I have got many, and honestly, my memory fails me when it comes to anticipated releases, which is why when things come out is when I decide I'm reading it, I'm not reading it, I forgot about that one, I'm reading that one. I'm terrible with new releases. I even buy them and then I don't read them for like months and months on end, so it's like, it's a problem. However, I did note these that I'm very excited about. Betting on You by Lynn Painter. Anything Lynn Painter, honestly, I just know it's gonna be a hit for me. I absolutely love her books, and I can't wait to read this one. I'm vying for an arc, so I'm hoping I can get it. Then we have got Family Lore by Elizabeth Acevedo, another go-to author that anything Elizabeth Acevedo releases, I will be buying. Very excited about this one because this is also magical realism. Very first time she has done that with one of her stories. Checkmate by Ali Hazelwood, her YA debut. I read The Love Hypothesis, I enjoyed it. After that, I've just been kind of like, don't really know, because everything else in the STEM series, I'm like, I don't want to read the same thing. Like, listen, formulas are great, but we can't overdo it too much. And so I do want to read Love Theoretically that most recently came out, but this one I've heard great things about from the people reading the arcs. And so I'm really excited about Checkmate. It looks quite good. Also, Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare. I'm really excited to see her adult debut. I genuinely think that a lot of her strength lies in adult fantasy. I do think a lot of the Shadowhunter series could have been better as adult than YA. I do love the series though, and I'm not complaining. However, I'm very curious because she's been talking about this book for ages. I'm really excited to read Swordcatcher, and the cover also is freaking stunning, so I'm very excited about that. Biggest disappointment. And for this, I have got Fourth Wing. I'm honestly, I don't even know how to vouch for myself anymore because I feel like regardless of what I say and how I justify why I didn't enjoy this book, people are just going to not like it anyway. In terms of like my opinion, because everybody loves this book. I still will say I didn't love this book, and I love it for everybody who did. I'm just not that person, but somebody had to enjoy it. Like, somebody had to love it. I'm glad y'all are. And so in this one, we follow Violet as she goes into military school, because it is sort of a legacy thing that if your parents were dragon riders, then you're kind of expected to be dragon riders and so on and so forth. It is very unusual that anybody who is not a legacy kind of gets into this realm of the government and the branches to study. She really doesn't want to go into Dragon Riding Academy because there's been a lot of underestimation and a lot of condescension when it comes to her and this particular skill, this particular school, which is why she wanted to study to be a scribe. However, she goes into said school, and it's a lot about her overcoming a lot of the obstacles, a lot of her proving herself that she can do a lot of these things and prove herself that she can do it for herself and for nobody else. And in the midst of that, she ends up meeting Xaden Ryerson, who is like her sworn enemy, but it's not really hers. It's like their parents are like sworn enemies, so like by, I guess, by osmosis, they are each other's, even though they've never met each other. And so that's kind of where it goes. It's a romantasy, and there's a lot of that. I don't know how to explain this, but the vibes this book gives me in a way is like Zodiac Academy, and I haven't even read Zodiac Academy, so like take that with a grain of salt. I know you're about to yell at me, and I'm so sorry. However, this book is her first year. I don't know if the second book is gonna follow her second year. I'm really uninterested in finding out. I really don't want to read about like different years in this training academy. The idea of it is not something that appeals to me, and I just didn't love it overall. I didn't love her connection with Xaden. I didn't really love their dynamic and I guess the justification of them being enemies and then becoming romantically involved, and their chemistry as well. It didn't really seem like they knew each other at all, and so that part of it just kind of kept bugging me as the story kept going along. The politics to me also seemed very underdeveloped developed, but it might just be the fact that we obviously get to see it from Violet's point of view and we don't get to see like the wider view of it, which is something that I prefer. I personally prefer like third person omniscient. There are redeeming factors to this, like the fact that it's, you know, it's very entertaining, and the fact that the dragons are actually characters in the storyline, which is great. However, I wanted to be hooked more into this because it sounded so cool and everybody was loving it. I do think this is one of those cases where the hype kind of just killed the mood for me. I was expecting so much more and then I was disappointed, and it happens sometimes. Like, that's fine. It is fine. Biggest surprise, and I've got two. The first one being Hellbent. In this book, I felt it. I felt the way I felt when I was like reading The Mortal Instruments back in high school. Actually, middle school. It was a long time ago. I was engaged. I was stressed. I was rooting for the characters. I was rooting for everything and everyone. I just wanted to keep on going and I wanted to have more of the story. I loved that we got Darlington in this one and that we got a lot of Darlington, because that was the part that I wanted to see more of in Ninth House, and I was not disappointed with Darlington's iteration, I guess. And I think the tone of the book in general is so much different than Ninth House. While Ninth House is like very dark academia, very like solemn, very just sort of mellow and sad and depressing and like unnecessarily trauma dumpy, this almost feels like a breath of fresh air in comparison. I think it might have a lot to do with our main character's mindset, because we do follow Alex Stern as she has an accident, and when she is at the hospital, she is approached by Lethe, which is one of Yale's secret societies, and they contact her because she has the ability to see grays, which are ghosts, and they could really use that ability in said secret societies. And so she goes to Yale, full ride, full scholarship, full everything, doesn't have to pay for a single thing. And while she is there, not only does her mentor Darlington disappear, but there is also a murder she has to solve. And in the first one, it's like all again very, very sad. In this one, you kind of see an Alex who is very much loving life in a way, and she has friends and she cares about her friends and she cares about what happens to people, which is very much the antithesis of the first one. It's like she helps in the first one because she has to watch her back, but it's not necessarily because she is actually, you know, protective of these people and she loves these people. And so it's a complete 180, I think, just mindset wise, and I loved it. And this is so much more fantasy heavy than the first one. It's just the way to go. Like, I love fantasy with a sprinkle of dark academia. This is my preferred book. And the reason why this is a surprise is because I reread Ninth House and I didn't enjoy it, and I was kind of not looking forward to this anymore, but Leigh Bardugo did it! And then the other one we've got is Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. Another book that I personally really didn't think I was going to enjoy, and a book that a lot of people didn't think I was going to enjoy, mostly because I was on like that, you know, fantasy YA hater era and I really wasn't having a great time. And so I think I read this at the right time because I found it immensely enjoyable. We follow Evangeline Fox, who grew up very enamored with stories. She loves fairy tales, loves stories, and she finds herself in a tricky situation where her beloved is marrying somebody else. And in order to get him out of that situation, she makes a deal with one of the fates named Jax to break it off real quick. We're not gonna get married. Thank you, God, we're not getting married today. And in exchange of that, she will give him 3 kisses that he can utilize on other people for his own wicked purposes, and it goes from there. It is very reminiscent of Mirror Mirror, the movie with Lily Collins, and then also Once Upon a Time. It is so good, very vibey. Like, it's not one of those books that you go into for the plot. It's one of those books that you go into for the purple prose. It's one of those books that you go into for ambiance. It's one of those books that you go into for the character development. And if you like sort of fairy tale retellings, or this is not a fairy tale retelling, but it feels that way. And so if you like sort of those types of books, this is really something you could enjoy. And so I think, again, I entered it with the right set of expectations at the right time, and that's why it ultimately ended up working for me after thinking I was not gonna love it. Favorite new author, debut, or new to you? Have to go with Kelly Yang, who wrote Front Desk. I have not read any other Kelly Yang books, but I have faith that I will love every single one of them, because I have never cried the entirety of the way through a book. I've cried in like bursts, but I've never cried the whole way through, and I did with Front Desk. Ultimately, it ended up becoming one of my favorite new middle grade books, and I can't wait to dive into the second one. I also own Parachutes by Kelly Yang, and I know she has other books out. I can't wait to see where else she takes me. I have faith. I typically don't say like, oh, I've got a new author before I've read like 3-ish of their books or like 2 of their books, but with this one, I think I'm confident. I doubt she'll disappoint disappoint me. Newest fictional crush. And I think I do have to say Darlington. Because listen, Darlington was already like sultry and like all the things in Ninth House. However, in Hellbent, it just did it for me again. Like this iteration of Darlington, just so good. Just so freaking good. I think I would also have to say Max from Daughter of No Worlds. What an amazing love interest. Also, Delilah Green, very, very hot. Very, very sultry. Love her 2 bits. Jax from Once Upon a Broken Heart, not like the greatest person ever, but it's also an immortal being, so like, do they really have to be good? I think they only have to be morally gray, and in that regard, he fulfills the prompt. And then we've got newest favorite character. I really don't know who I'd go for. Like, I've read many a good book. I don't know if I've got like a new favorite character, but I'll get back to you on that one. A book that made you cry, and at what cost did it make me cry? I am talking about Orange, the manga collection, volume 1, which made me cry for several reasons. 1, because it was sad. 2, because it was depressing. And the 3rd, because it actually was a little bit triggering. So in this one, we have a friend group, and one of the people in this friend group suddenly dies in the future, and our main character, Naho, receives a letter from her future self requesting she try her hardest in order to prevent this event from happening. It was a beautiful display of friendships. It was, I mean, I gave this 5 stars. Like, that's not to say like I didn't love this. I loved it, but it was just like a little bit of a traumatizing experience. But it was a beautiful display of friendships. It was a beautiful display of, I think, the inner battles being fought by people that you really cannot see. There are a lot of things that are invisible, whether, you know, I mean, we can include even chronic illness to this, but particularly with mental health, it's like so internal, it's so invisible that a lot of the time you can't see people not be okay. And I think this book was a perfect exemplification of that, and a really beautiful journey in exploring that, particularly through a friend group that might not know what resources to use when it comes to a case like this, who might not know who to go to and who to talk to. It's a very frustrating journey, but I think nonetheless a very realistic one. And so I loved it. It was good. Made me sob my fucking eyes out. However, the trigger warnings, don't be me. Don't be Mel. Don't be a Mel. In life, don't be a Mel. A book that made you happy. Delilah Green Doesn't Care. It was one of the first few books I read this year. Or was this the first book I read this year? That's actually a great question. I can't remember, but this was a joy to read. I read this, I think, in 2 sittings, and it was just everything. Everything I personally love to see in a romance book was included in here. I love romance books where we get to understand the characters intimately. We get to know what scares them, and it feels real. Like, it's not just like, ah, she's scared of like dying. It's like, no, it's like, really explain it to me. Explain it to me in like the most gut-wrenching way. I want to know what the characters fear, what they're looking forward to, what their aspirations are. I want to know, I want to understand, especially for such character-based books. I want to know what drives these characters, who they are. And I think that Ashley Herring Blake did a wonderful job at it, which is, I think, based on the romance books I have read in the past, it's not something I've come by quite frequently. And so I love that I personally really felt for these characters, and I related to these characters, and they felt just human to me, which I absolutely loved. This is a sapphic romance, and we follow Delilah Green, who is a professional photographer. She is contacted by her sister to go photograph her wedding, and in the midst of that, she ends up meeting the maid of honor, and they end up canoodling behind her sister's back, and it's got a lot of familial dynamics. Our love interest Claire is also a single mom. I love the single parent trope, and I just loved every single second of it, from Claire and Delilah's dynamics to Delilah and her daughters. Oh my god, their dynamic was so good. I just love seeing, I guess, the love interest interact with the kid and making sure that they're getting along, and getting to see also just that chemistry, and getting to see them really build a relationship so that the partnership as a whole really works. And so this was just a joy to read. Loved it so much. Please read Delilah Green Doesn't Care. Most beautiful book you've bought so far this year. Let me tell you something. We've got a problem with special editions because I want to buy all of them. I've bought several really pretty editions. One of them is Divine Rivals. I just love this Fairy Loot edition. I think it's so much better than the regular edition, at least the US one. The UK cover is really pretty pretty. The edges are stunning. We have got some really incredible end papers. And then on top of that, we have also got like a beautiful naked hardback. So Divine Rivals is one that comes to mind immediately. If not that, I also pulled out Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia for Wild Fairies. Another one that the UK cover is just a massive improvement from the US one. The Fairy Loot edition, again, is just absolutely stunning. We have got purple sprayed edges, and then we have got like these faded stenciled mushrooms, which I love. We've got end papers. The coolest part to me really is the naked book, because it looks almost like one of those cloth-bound classics you would buy at Barnes & Noble, and I love it so much. So this is another edition that comes to mind for being very beautiful. But another one that comes to mind is Yellow Phase by R.F. Kuang. We have got the yellow sprayed edges, and this, like the dripping pen, is so good. And I love this little detail right here where we have got the signature blocked out by the post-it. I just think it's a nice little detail for the story. And then the actual hardback is the title of the fictional story in the book, which I think again is like such a cool tidbit. And again, like the name of the author is like crossed out. I think it's lovely, and I can't wait to read this. I just know I am going to love it because R.F. Kuang never disappoints. And then last but not least, we have got what books do you need to read by the end of the year? And honestly, I'd love to answer this in the same way that I answer it every other year. And it's kind of like everything. Like I do want to read a lot. Like I always want to read the things I own. That's always the goal. However, nothing specific comes to mind. So I'm like, you know what? I just want to read the books I have. I want to read the things that are on my shelves and kind of read a few of like my, you know, TBR veterans that have been here for a while. But as far as like, what would you like to read? I'm like, I just like to mood read. Honestly, I just like to pick up whatever I'm feeling in the moment. And that's it for today, friends. That is the mid-year freakout book tag. I hope we enjoyed another installment of it. It's actually crazy to think about the fact that this is my 4th time making this tag. It's just like it doesn't quite compute to me that we've done it in 2020, 2021, 2022, and now this. It's absolutely wild. We've been here for 3 amazing years. Actually, this Tuesday was the channel's anniversary, so all quite fitting with a mid-year check-in because we literally started the channel 3 years ago. Again, hope you enjoyed this. Give this a massive thumbs up if you did. Don't forget to comment down below any of the replies to these questions. If you want to answer them, feel free to do so down in the comments. Maybe what was your biggest surprise? What was your biggest disappointment? What's your favorite book so far for this year? Just let a girl know. Feel free to answer the tag completely even if you want to in the comments. And if you reach the very end of the video, let's throw everybody off and do a clown emoji because how are we in mid-year already? I always say that. It's a nice little line to drop every year. And if you want to support the channel further, Patreon is always linked down below in case you want to do so. Love you all so much, and I shall catch you in the next one. Bye, guys.